Good morning. This is Addison Shonland. My guest today is Zuzana Hrnkova, Vice President of Marketing at ATR in Toulouse. Thank you for speaking with me today, Zuzana.
Hello, Addison. I'm very happy for having the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you. Thank you. So I was very interested. Obviously, you guys are, or ATR is right in the middle of the regional business, and what we hear from people across the travel industry and then the airline industry, the banking industry, the aviation focused banking industry, that a recovery is going to start from the bottom up, regionals up. Is that the same? You have the same opinion on that?
Well, Addison, when we have started monitoring the traffic situation, traffic evolution during pandemic crisis, we have observed that ATR was more resilient to the crisis. It was the segment that declined slower compared to any other segment. And as we predicted, it is recovering faster, propped up by domestic traffic in countries with a good infection management. And also the reason behind that the ATR was more resilient and now is recovering quicker is that ATR operators are ensuring essential services, providing the lifeline to communities, and also that the aircraft platform is versatile, enabling operators to adapt to the market demand. And already today, there is nearly half of ATR fleet back to the service. And I mentioned countries with a good infection management, and I would like to share with you one good example. Korea. We have a ATR operator in Korea, ATR, and probably you have seen a very recent announcement that the ATR is purchasing 2 additional ATR to extend their fleet. So they purchase 2 ATR 72-500s from the ATR asset fleet, which means that there are some signs. Another good example is Taiwan, another country with a good pandemic management. They kept a full fleet of 7 ATR aircraft in service during the crisis. And what we expect also is the recovery rate to accelerate in the upcoming 2 months. However, we have to be clear that it will be far from 2019 traffic level.
Right. I guess one of the advantages that you must have noticed with your product is you have had a cargo capability in your turboprop for several years, and clearly the need for carrying cargo has become really critical in lots of markets. So that must have been a huge advantage for you.
Okay, so indeed, we have already today around more than 100 freighter cargo ATR configurations. So they are converted aircraft from passenger to freighters. And then we will deliver this year the brand new freighter aircraft to FedEx, our launch customers. So on the freighter side and on the new freighter aircraft, we have the large cargo door, which enabling also transportation of containers and pallets. on top of bulk cargo with a nets. And that's the main difference between the P2F configuration, and also there is a improved capability of the payload. So that's on the freighter side. However, what we have observed during the pandemic crisis, because there was a lack of belly cargo, and the ATR platform was adapted to do like a quick conversion from passenger to cargo aircraft for transportation of light cargo. So we have observed this kind of like a quick adaptation to the market changes, or with a quick change, quick configuration. Airlines like Fiji Airways, for instance, they removed the seat and installed the floor nets, enabling attachment of the cargo, and they have a capability to convert very quickly overnight passenger aircraft to a light cargo configuration, and offer tactical services, or for increasing the packages demand, cargo demand, light cargo demand, or medical supply. Right. And then I would like to mention another example, which is in operation, for instance, with PNG, Papua New Guinea, who adapted passenger aircraft without the removing seat, but adapting a special packs for transportation of cargo on passenger seats. So yes, we have observed this kind of very tactical operations for light cargo. And what I believe is that probably there is a new market potential for operators in remote area to use such capability and flexibility in future. So maybe a new market segment will be developed.
Right. It's interesting that you describe it that way, Zuzana, because it seems to me that given the fact that the airline industry is desperately trying to get traffic to come back, and people are increasingly terrified of not just getting sick, but dying from the sickness, the COVID. But it looks to me like this is a really interesting time for people who offer turboprops that are combi, a combi airplane, because you don't have to sell a lot of seat capacity, and you do have the cargo capacity. That seems to be almost an ideal airplane these days for so many operators, that you've got literally like a small flying pickup truck that can offer you revenue for people for a small load factor and still carry freight. It seems to be the ideal plane right now.
So for the time being, what we have seen is rather capability to have a quick configuration from passenger to cargo, and being able to maintain the flexibility for cargo transportation and passenger transportation. And of course, we will continue to see how the market demand, market request, market need is evolving, and we will consider a different solution. For now, there is just maybe very few combi aircraft in turboprop category, which have been converted from passenger to freighter, which are in operation. So up to now, the market did not really showcase the high interest. However, we will continue monitoring and trying to understand what's the need for the future.
Mm.
But we have a full cargo and then light cargo configuration from passenger to the transportation of light cargo. That's true.
It's interesting. We in the case of Air New Zealand or the New Zealand market, there's the talk. That's where they first started talking about a travel bubble between Australia and New Zealand. And so this idea of travel bubbles is emerging. It's not going as fast as I think a lot of people would like to see. How do you see this idea of a travel bubble helping regional airlines to keep the recovery going?
So what I believe is that this travel bubble is rather perceived as an opportunity for regional operator. And it is also demonstrating importance for governments to continue and favor the exchange between countries, which may relaunch the local economy and ease also the business exchange between two countries. So I definitely see this point for regional operation as a very positive and offering new opportunity to relaunch the activity.
It's interesting because there's an advantage for a large market like the United States, which is one bubble. The EU is not a bubble, although politically it might be, but it's going to be interesting to see if in Europe the regionals within, let's say, a French regional can fly to Switzerland or fly to Germany, fly to Belgium. If there will be an EU bubble, that would help. I don't know if there's any talk of that.
So of course there is an observation and how to say the lesson learned from New Zealand and Australian case, and well, we believe that the additional opportunity will be also created in countries in Europe.
So the airline industry generally is facing its worst financial crisis. Like you were saying to me earlier on, it's like all the previous history of crises have come at once. It's a super crisis. What is the vision at ATR of how the industry can recover and how long you think this might take?
So the crisis is definitely not the short-term crisis. So as we discussed at the beginning, is serious. However, during the crisis from March up to now, we have observed the behavior of the regional market and the evolution. And as I said, the regional market and then the turboprop and the ATR remains very resilient. So we had part of fleet and operators active, mainly because those operators are deserving essential services. So I would like to mention Canadian North, for instance. There is a lot of example of the ATR and Canadian North operations to connect the remote area. So then I mentioned the flexibility of the platform or adaptability. So we had a lot of example of repatriation flights because the aircraft is not only adaptable in terms of configuration, but is also offering the right size, and mainly is the aircraft which have a very good airport accessibility, which can fly to the places than the others or bigger modules cannot fly. Difficult airfield access. So we had a couple of examples from Budaer, who provided a repatriation flight or a medical supply in the region, so in Nepal and also in Bangladesh. In Brazil, Walpass did a lot of medical supply, transporting to different places the COVID-19 test kits. So already during the pandemic, there was sign that the ATR operators deploy some tactical services. So this is one point. Then now when the recovery started, we have also observed that the operators flying the ATRs or having on their fleet ATRs and the single-aisle aircraft started to deploy ATR on historic routes operated by single aisle. So, which means that the aircraft capacity is also more adapted for low passenger demand.
Right.
Then what we will see in the near future is also how the people is going to, where they're going to spend their holiday. So maybe this crisis is also going to favor the domestic tourism, which can be also another opportunity for the regional operators for point-to-point traffic. And then why not to see also new business models, maybe semi-private type of operation with a smaller module operating from smaller airports, where the passenger crowd could be managed in more efficient way. That's another possible opportunity. And then we see also the e-commerce growing. And the e-commerce, it's interesting segment, because if you look at the past and you see that the e-commerce was resilient to any crisis. So 2008 crisis, or even the crisis around 2001, so early 2000, during those crises, the e-commerce didn't stop to grow. So we believe that the e-commerce is another angle which will give the opportunity for airline to fly freighter aircraft.
If we look forward, I mean, there's, every conversation I've had with people in the industry is always sort of focused on the crisis, but let's look beyond the clouds and look into the brighter future. How does ATR envision the idea of hybrid powered turboprops? Because it seems to be that the turboprop market looks like the first place we're going to see hybrid power. Is that something that some thoughts you can share with us?
So this hybrid subject is, of course, very closely linked with the environmental impact. So, as you know, the ATR is the platform which is offering already a very low environmental footprint compared to competing aircraft. So we believe that the turboprop technology will be part of the future. And even if you look at different urban mobility solution projects which are being worked on, all are based on turboprop related technologies. And as I said at the beginning, ATR always advocated eco-friendly solutions. So even today, if you compare the ATR environmental footprint, we are producing, so our aircraft, our platform is producing 40% less CO2 emission compared to equivalent regional aircraft. And of course, leading also in the noise emission, not only CO2 emissions, so very good neighborhood to the people. So now ATR is working to use its experience from the past and expertise in the turboprop technology to further develop and leverage step change piloting and propulsion technologies as a leader in regional aviation, which is the case for the time being. So what we can say on hybridation, there is a multiple option of different technologies coming to life. And we believe that the ATR platform is the ideal size to start bringing this solution into the real world, because the readiness of new technology, even if it's electric or if there is the hydrogen behind, we believe that the technology step is going to come from lower end segment. Mm-hmm. And already today, ATR as an airframer, we with the new ATR 42 STOL, we have extended our market positioning to this 30-seater lower end segment. Because today, ATR 42 is a 50-seater, ATR 70 can transport up to 78 passengers. And with the STOL capability, 42 STOL, this is the aircraft which will come to the service in roughly 2 years' time. This aircraft is improving the airport accessibility, so have capability to take off and land on airfield 800 meters with 800 meters long runway with the 40 passengers on board. And those kind of operation is done today with aging turboprop aircraft. So 30-seater, I would mention a Dash 8 200, Saab 340. So there is around 1,200 small turboprop, which are not anymore in production, which will need a replacement. And the ATR with improved takeoff and landing capability is positioned as a replacement of this smaller 30-seater segment. So what I try to say is that thanks to the STOL aircraft, ATR is already positioned in the lower end segment. So as I said, we believe that the new technology will go through the lower end segment first before is used for larger modules. And what is important on top of the technology is also take into account and anticipate all necessary safety, operational and design requirements, and also observe what would be needed for the airline in terms of architecture, infrastructure. So how, what needs to be done in airline world to be prepared for the new technology aircraft. And this is why we signed in 2018 an agreement with Air New Zealand to explore the opportunity and impact of the new propulsion technology in the regional ecosystem. So this is another angle.
Fascinating. Zuzana, thank you so much for the conversation.
You are welcome, Edison.